In 2021, 75% of women said they have experienced some form of sexual harassment in public by the age of 24, and 4% of men, equivalent to 621,000 people, have experienced sexual assault since the age of 16. Sexual assault and harassment is a huge issue, not just within the UK, but the world. Approximately 85,000 women and 12,000 men experience rape or sexual assault by penetration in England and Wales every year. That's roughly 11 sexual offences every hour. However, only 15% of victims report it to the police. Despite these huge and terrifying statistics, it took the death of an innocent woman for the English government to begin to put in measures to protect these vulnerable people. Sarah Everard was an innocent woman walking home who was murdered by the man who was supposed to protect her. If the police will not protect us, who will? When I was 13, I used to take 2 buses home from school, one from school to town and one from town to my house. They were both always incredibly busy, full of school kids and people getting home from work. On the bus home from town to my house, I was sat next to the window and there was an empty seat next to me. A man sat next to me and he just sat there, and he got on with a friend, and I didn't think anything of it. I had headphones in. It was always an incredibly busy bus, so 9 times out of 10 I was sat next to someone, and I sort of gotten used to it by now. I've been going to this school for a year. But when the bus set off, he began holding my hand, and of course I was confused because I was around 13 and this guy was between 40 and 50, and he just held my hand, and I tried to pull away, and he sort of tightened his grip, and I didn't really know what to do. And then as the bus was moving along, he attempted to kiss my hand, and with his full strength tried pushing my hand to his mouth, and I of course tried to pull my hand away, and he saw that and sort of said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you didn't want it," or something like that. I can't really remember, but I remember he tried to make me guilty, and he just wouldn't let go of my hand, and I was cornered into the window. And I remember looking around at this fully packed bus, and no one was looking at me, no one was trying to help. And I remember looking at his friend that he got on the bus with, and they were laughing. He was laughing at the fact his friend was holding hands and trying to kiss a 13-year-old girl. I was quite clearly 13. I was in my school uniform. And he knew how old I was, and he still did. He still held my hand, he still tried to kiss me. I pressed the bus stop to get out, and I was only on the bus for like 5 minutes, but it was terrifying. And as soon as I pressed that button, I suddenly thought that this guy wasn't going to let me up because he had to get up for me to get out of the seat, and I thought that he just wasn't going to let me get up and I was going to be trapped again. Luckily, he did end up letting me up, but I remember him saying stuff like, "Oh, why are you on the bus if you're only going to go 5 minutes away?" Or there was no point going on the bus. And I remember going through like everything in my mind of like, okay, don't tell strangers anything. So I told him some lie about my sister, which I don't even have a sister, working at a shop that was near the bus stop, and that I'd forgotten to meet her. But I walked home the rest of the way off the bus stop. The reason I took the bus is because I used to live in quite a dodgy area, so the bus was safer than walking home, but turns out my safe space had been ruined. And when I got home, I was home alone, and I remember just crying my eyes out. And because I didn't know how to deal with it. I was 13. I'd never been taught how to deal with stuff like that. And I just cried my eyes out. And then nothing happened after that. I didn't tell anyone. I never told any friends. I never told a teacher. I never told my parents. I was just a scared, vulnerable little kid. I was alone, and he knew that, and he preyed upon that. I never knew how to define what happened to me. I never knew whether it was sexual assault, whether it was sexual harassment, or I was just overreacting. But I wasn't. I know now, 5 years later, that I was sexually assaulted. To explore the topic of sexual assault and harassment in young people, I interviewed multiple individuals about their stories. Their names and voices have been changed for privacy reasons.
When this happened to me, I was 11 years old, I believe. I was in year 7 in secondary school.
I was 16 years old when this happened.
Probably 16, 17. I would imagine they were in year 11 in school. So they were in their last year in school. I was in my first year in school.
He was about 19, 20.
Well, a little bit of both, I think. Whilst nothing was done physically to me by anyone else, something could have happened if it wasn't stopped in time. And I did see things at that age in front of me that I wouldn't have expected to see or wanted to see. It was kind of forced onto me at a young age, against my will. I didn't have a clue what was going on. So a little bit of both, I would say. It was both sexual harassment and sexual assault.
I don't know how to define it. I think I don't know, it's such like a really scary term, and so I think I'd say assault and a bit of harassment.
We all went on a school trip camping. It was a few year 7 and a few from year 11. So it was a few younger boys and a few older boys. I should say I went to an all boys school, so there was no women, there was no girls around. Teachers, but all male teachers came with us on the trip as well. So one night, we were paid up. The younger boys were paid up with some of the older boys. So the older boys took me out pegging, so taking tent pegs out of people's tents for a joke. So we did that, and then they told me, "Oh, follow us to the woods. We're all going to go to the woods now and like hang out." So I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, sounds fun." When I was there, then on the walk there, they started to tell me things which was quite weird at the time because I was only 11. I didn't really know much about sex, much about anything to do with anything like that. So they started telling me that they were gay with each other, and I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, no judgment." And then they started to describe to me then things that they would do to each other, and I got kind of creeped out because I didn't really want to hear about this. It was kind of personal, and I got kind of on edge. Then I was like, "Oh, okay." So then we got back to the tent, and they kind of not locked the tent, they blocked me in. So they had their backs to the tent door, and I was at the back of the tent, and they said, "Do you want to see us do stuff?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to see anything. I kind of just want to go back to my own tent now." So they started to undress and do stuff to each other, physical things with each other, sexually. And I was like, right, not interested, don't want to get involved. I tried my best to get out of the situation, but they were pushing me back, they were blocking the door, they were laughing about it. So I don't know how seriously they were taking it. I don't know how much further they would have taken it either. So a little later, then, after they kept doing things to each other, they were trying to get me to take my clothes off. They were like, "Oh, come on, get involved, take your clothes off, take your top off, take your trousers off." And thankfully, another student was outside and they could have like knocked on the tent door and started to undo the zip. But they saw what was going on, that they were naked, doing things to each other, and I was just sort of there. And I don't know if they thought that I was involved. I don't know if they thought it was a joke or they were playing a prank. But they didn't really like kind of help me or defend me. I said I needed help. I was like, "Oh, can you help me? I need to get out." And they just kind of left. But thankfully, then after that, the two older boys did stop what they were doing. They put their clothes back on and they just sent me on my way. But they did tell me before I left the tent, "If you do tell anyone, we will beat you up." And as a year 7, hearing that from older boys, of course I wasn't going to tell anyone. I didn't want to get beat up. I didn't want to get found out for doing anything dodgy on the camping trip.
It was New Year's Eve, about 2 years ago, and I was at a party at a friend's house, and I was on the sofa, and I was really drunk. I was really really drunk, and I was really like emotionally vulnerable because like something big had happened and lots was going on. And I was sat on the sofa, and my friend was sat next to me, and it's quite a big, it's quite a small sofa actually. It's really small, and a boy was sat next to me. He was the boy. He was like 19, I don't know, and he he started to kiss me, and I didn't really know what was going on, and so I was kissing him back because I was very drunk and I didn't know what's going on. And then he kept like touching me, and he kept trying to put his hand up my skirt, and he was like, because the sofa was so small, he was sort of sat on top of me, like he was pinning me down almost, and because he was so much bigger than I was, I couldn't push him off, and like my friend next to me, I was trying to look over at her with like to tell her like, can you move so I can get up and stuff, but she sort of just like smiled because she thought that because that's her friend, and so it's just like, oh, look at these two, like they're getting off, and whatever. And he kept, yeah, he held his in my head with his hand to keep it in place, and he was like, let's go upstairs, let's go upstairs. And I was like, no, no. I was clearly saying no. But like he was like on top of me, and I was looking around, and other people at the party, they were like looking over at us, and they were like laughing because it's like a party and people kiss and stuff. But like, and so I felt really helpless because everyone didn't know what was actually going on.
I confided in my friends a few years later. I think when I was in like year 9, so I was about 13, 14, and I told them, oh, this really weird thing happened to me when I was camping before. And I explained what happened. And they just found it really funny. They were like, oh, that's really weird and really random. But I never reported it to like the teachers or the police. Because like I said, at the time, I was quite scared of it getting out and I was going to be in trouble then.
I never reported it because it took me months to realise what had gone on, like to process what happened.
It affected me for a while on the camping trip because I was surrounded by the two boys. So I couldn't get away from them, and I would see them every day because they were in the same school as me as well. I would always see them at like dinner time or break time, and they would always look at me, and I would like always look at them, and there was this sort of like discomfort sort of thing where they knew what happened and what went on, and it was almost as if they were sort of like challenging me, like, I dare you to tell, I dare you to tell on us and see what happens. But when they left school, then they didn't stay on for sixth form. They just left school. Didn't see them around. I haven't seen them since either. So it hasn't really affected me that much. I wouldn't say it hasn't. Not that I know of, maybe subconsciously somewhere, but I don't think that it's had a major effect on my life at the moment. And again, I think because my friends didn't really take it seriously, maybe I stopped taking it as serious as it should have been. I maybe made it out as a bit of a joke, like, yeah, it was kind of strange, wasn't it? But in reality, it was really wrong what happened. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I have sort of tried to make it more of a joke than what it was. I'm not sure.
Obviously, it affected me quite negatively because people, because I was still friends with his friends, and people made jokes about it, and people were like, "Oh, look, you got off with him, you got off with him." Um, he works in the shop, in my town, and so I get really scared to go in there.
I just asked them why they did it. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be angry or upset with them. I would just be like, what were you thinking? Why would you think that was okay to do? Like I said, they were a lot older than me, so they did, they were sort of, I like looked up to them at school, the older boys. And I would just think like, what made you do that? Like, if they were gay or not, that's got nothing to do with it. I still think it's quite inappropriate for them to be doing that to underage students who were very impressionable at the time as well.
If I was face to face with that person, I don't think I would have anything to say to them, to be honest, because they don't understand what they did wrong. Like to them, I was just like a little girl that he could take advantage of, and like that's what boys do. And so people have told me that I was overreacting, calling it assault, but I was like, when someone's like putting their hands up your skirt, and you're clearly saying no, and they're up on top of you, and like, I think that's what I call it. So I don't know what I'd say to them.
I think differently because I'm a male. I think if a female were to tell her female friends what happened with two men, there would be a lot more action taken against the two men. Maybe if I did things differently, maybe if I reported them to the teachers, maybe things would have changed. But I think, like, my friends saw it as a joke, like, oh, that's really weird. Whereas I think if it happened to a female, I think there would be a bit more of a uproar about it, which is quite worrying in a way. I think men do sexual assault against men by women or by other men isn't seen as serious as sexual assault on women, maybe. But I do think that it is a big issue against men, not to diminish what happens to women, of course not. But I do think that because I was a man and I confided in my masculine friends, it wasn't seen as serious. Whereas if I was a woman and I told my friends that two men did this in front of me, there probably would have been a little bit more serious action taken. So I think gender does play a big role in what happens during the sexual assault, after the sexual assault, or sexual harassment.
After being given a list of actions that are deemed sexual assault or sexual harassment, I asked a group of students aged 16 to 18, have you ever been sexually assaulted or harassed?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
So before I read the definition of sexual assault and what counts as sexual assault, I would have said no. But having read what counts as sexual assault, I would actually say yes, I have.
As a woman, I changed my life, my plans, the way I walk home out of fear of being attacked, and it's terrifying to know this will never change. I'm 18 years old, but I know for the next 80 years I will always be afraid to even just walk alone. I know I'm not alone in this fear. Millions of people live in fear and caution every day. It's always, your skirt was too short, you were asking for it, or you should have learned. No. How about you teach your sons and daughters not to rape, not to sexually harass or assault people? After the death of Sarah Everard, the government had put up £25 million for better street lighting and CCTV, as well as plainclothed officers in pubs and clubs. But if the police are the ones committing the crimes, how does this help anyone but the attackers? We need institutional change. These measures are not enough. We need harder sentences and charges, otherwise nothing will ever change. As children, we are taught about strange danger, the danger of being near someone unknown, and most men grow out of this fear, but women never do, and some men become the strangers we are taught from such a young age to be afraid of.